Welcome to Navarrero's online video. Today I want to talk to you guys about my thoughts on the current state of the game, since I've finally been able to come back and play some more of it after about a 2 month hiatus, thanks to my PC not working. Still doesn't, I just managed to set it back up on the old system so I can at least play the game again. And yeah, besides that I also want to talk about the December content. I know this is all kinda old news for you guys who have been able to just carry along as the game put out the updates, but for me, well, I haven't really been able to do much for the past few months. So let's start with something actually positive, and that is that Mr. Rerosen finally rediscovered his old running shoes. He is a bit quicker now than he ever used to be, and that's really convenient for a lot of things. This makes the game feel much less sluggish. Whatever you're doing, if you're just running up to some switches in order to line everything up for the next train to come by, or if you're actually laying out a bit more track, which you're also of course doing on foot, or just running around the area like a madman like I am doing right now. So to give you guys a bit of perspective on this, the climax, which I accidentally deleted, has a top speed of about 11 or 12 miles per hour. And before this update, this used to be the fastest engine that John could rarely catch back up to. With the new update, we can also now outrun 60 miles per hour top speed engines, so Heisler and the Porters. And I think we are about 80 miles per hour. I haven't tried anything with class 48 yet, but I think this is about the ballpark that we can relay on up now. And honestly, this is such a huge difference in quality of life, which just makes the entire game feel a bit better. Another thing that has been done is that John is now a bit shorter than he used to be. He always felt like a giant, especially with some of the smaller engines. But now, while he's still, well, it's kind of glitching through some of the ground plates here. At least he now fits into the engines much more properly. So yeah, you can also now crouch down not quite as far in order to look out the windows. So this now makes it feel like you are actually kind of fitting in with all of these engines here. However, and this is where we start getting to the negative stuff, this also seems to have had a negative effect, and that is with some of the engines that are a bit higher up. It's really hard to get into those right now. Sometimes you can get one of these weird jumps to get into the engine, but it's not as easy as just stepping up and being in there. I think ideally all of these step-up boards, they should be turned into ladders, so that basically they work like ladders. You approach them and whoop, you are on top of whatever you want to get into. So yeah, that would be highly appreciated. This can be quite frustrating, especially if you have a runaway train or something. I can at least enter this engine from the back, jumping on and just climbing over the tender, sliding down the coal here. It's a bit weird. Another thing, and I know this is an old change from the November update, in order to engage brakes or regulators, the reverser, you now need to pull everything so much further than you ever used to. I'm now just using my entire right arm in order to do this movement. Otherwise, as I used to do it with just a flick from the wrist, I can maybe get up to 50% and then it already gets pretty uncomfortable, so this is kind of annoying. The game's moderators have already told people to just increase their mouse sensitivity in the menus. However, that's gonna apply to everything, and this seems to be a really specific thing that I just wanted to revert back, but seems like this is here to stay, and this is really annoying whenever you're dealing with trains. Whenever you need to brake, this whole thing is just, it's not fun. Another thing regarding the brakes, which is a bit more of a bug. Let me just get an engine which I think has the issue. And this is something that a lot of them can have, but it's really random on when it appears. So this is something that I only ever encountered with brakes inside the engine. And this is the actual brake here. If I try to pull it close, it just jumps back to 0. Can also be that it goes to another value, maybe like 10% or something, and also happens if I don't have it fully engaged. And the really annoying thing here is that it even happens in the F menu, but you cannot see it. So now with the overlay, it looks like the brake is fully engaged, but let me just pull the regulator. This doesn't seem like an engine that's braking right now. Also, you see that there is actually pressure on the air brakes, but, well, this is just rolling. Can't really do much about it. So that's all a bit off. But another thing, while this is all a bug, another thing that has been added intentionally is the Steam cutoff simulation. And this seems to be the exact same model that has been introduced over a year ago. And back then it got removed again due to community backlash because people absolutely didn't like it. And therefore I do not understand why anybody thought it would be a good idea to put it back in here. So what it does is essentially once you get going, you will reach a certain speed, and if you want to go faster, you need to pull back on the reverser. I already made a video talking about what a realistic version of that would look like, but I gotta say, after not only trying it in the testing world here, but also starting a new playthrough, which I'll likely show off in another video, I think it kinda gets to a similar point that you would expect a proper realistic cutoff sim to do, but it does so completely ass backwards. So that's my current opinion on that. So I definitely do not really like it, but I think it could be worse with what it does, and overall it kind of helps having something to do while running the train for a long time. But then again, just trying to play on on Lake Valley again, I found that I'm not really engaging with that system all that much. To the point where I actually thought it might be useful to in the future just also find out what each engine can go with just the regulator and the reverser to full 100%. Because tickling out the top speed here, as soon as you put any load behind the engine, you are barely ever gonna get close to that. It's really restrictive. For some of the engines, like anything that goes up to 27 miles, I needed to pull the reverser back to like 4% or so, definitely single digits, and at that point you really don't have any pull left. And overall with realistic Steam Sim, you should still reach the top speed, but then if you don't pull back the reverser, then you would eventually run out of steam and then you would slow down. I think there are definitely scenarios where you would also result in having less top speed, because if you are running at top speed you cannot pull enough anymore, and that would likely be something to deal with. I don't fully know yet. It would likely require getting my hands on Century of Steam or something in order to figure out how that would feel. And overall, a lot of it also has to do with how it's balanced. So you can have all the mechanics, but it can still be a mess, but it can also be real good depending on how you tweak the values. So maybe what I would like for this game is that if you pull back the reverser to about 30%, that maybe at that point you can reach the top speed comfortably and not need to go down to almost 0. But yeah, another bug that I noticed with all of this. Let's go into the F menu for this. And let's just get the engine up to speed, which seems to be 20 miles, 21 miles per hour, with just the reverser fully forward. I'm always having the hardest trouble finding my mouse with this, but Let's now pull the reverser back. We are going to accelerate a bit more. And the fun thing, and this is what happens with every engine now, I think 25 miles should be good. Let me just pull everything into reverse. I don't think this is what it should be doing, but apparently as soon as your top speed goes above the regular top speed with reverser fully engaged, it doesn't really care about the reverser too much anymore. At least not beyond making the engine quicker. So if I get on the brakes for a moment, now it's pulling it backward again. So this is a bit of a weird one. I don't really know what's going on here, but this seems to be kinda messed up right now. So let me just try what happens if I go from full reverse regulator to fully positive. Ah. It also does... Oh, okay, now it cares. So it's very weird. Let's just pull this one back, and while doing so I can also talk about the last topic that I think is falling into the category of the current state of the game. I'm playing on Lake Valley now for my new playthrough to just get back into the game and have a bit more experience with how everything actually works right now. And let me tell you, that terrain there is just as annoying as with the first playthrough I made there, which by the way I don't think I'll be continuing on, but I'll talk about that in another video, I guess. Overall, I just feel that while with this one, it's still a bit weird with how you need to build your track completely around the mountains because you cannot do any terrain editing. It still kinda works because of the terrain curves and contours in this map being much more gentle than on the other one. And on the other one you often run into situations where you just cannot follow the stuff and you will need to build enormous bridges just to get from point A to point B. Doesn't stop you from getting where you want to, but makes it really tough and annoying to make it look nice. So yeah, in my opinion, that map with how the industries are placed, not only by myself but also by other people or just the default placement, that's really the biggest advertisement you can have for getting actual terrain editing tools. Which, to be clear, the devs have said we are not getting in this game. And I think that just is such a blow that makes this game so much worse than it should really be, and it's really going to stifle the potential in the long run. Unless maybe they at least put in the effort to design the mountains and the terrain curves to be a bit easier to deal with. But right now, as it is, Lake Valley is a pain, at least in my opinion. And with this one, I never felt as bad as trying to make a mountain trek in that map. So in my opinion, this one is still overall superior. Another thing about Lake Valley is that they are still using, or they're still adding new industries to that map as a default placement, while this one doesn't have anything from the new wheat and cow production line. However, having checked out the new placement, I gotta say, what the hell did they do with a water well? So this is a screenshot with only the default placements. In the distance, to the top right, we can see the wheat farm, which of course needs water, and the water well, which delivers said water in the bottom left. So if this was realistic and anybody was owning that wheat farm, do you think they would wait for a steam train to come by for the track to build up there and for them to deliver the water in cars via train? This is absolutely ridiculous, and I don't get why the devs did something like this to begin with. There's a whole nother thing to be said about the water well, and we are going to get into that in a moment. But this industry placement is just as boring and annoying and completely not thought out as what they did with the coal mine and the ironworks. So I don't know why they thought to repeat this. It's something that I cannot wrap my head around, but the default placements are so weak that while I wish I would have somebody else's version to play before I needed to come up with my own one, this definitely isn't it. So, that being said, let's get into the new content and talk about the water well since we already started. The water well, especially after trying to place it on the Lake Valley map, has a few issues. A lot of them I already talked about in the past, so I'll try to make it brief. First up, it draws comparison to the water tower because it does similar things like pumping up the water from the ground. The water towers can be placed anywhere, we can have as many as we want, and they are of course used to fuel the engines. The water well is supposedly to be treated like an industry. We can have a maximum out of 3 of them, and while it also seems like we could place them anywhere and they are barely larger than a facility, the water that we get from this is separate from the water tower's water, so we cannot put this into engines, we can only put this into the water cars and therefore put it into the different industries. I feel like it's absolutely ridiculous considering how water has been dealt with up until this point, that we now have this as a separate industry. At the very least they could have named the water something like fresh water or something, to at least make it a bit more distinct from the regular old water for the engine. And I think ideally I would have not have this industry in the game and instead just include a well on each of the different industries that actually need water. That looks like the more realistic scenario, and I think there could have been other things to do here instead of water transportation. For example, for the wheat farm, another input could be cow manure, just as a fertilizer or something. That would be a good use for these cars, but as it is right now, it's a bit weird. Okay, let's now have a closer look at these cars because I made sure to look into them. By that I mean opening up the hatch and actually checking the water level. So this one apparently is empty, but you can see that there is some water in here, and using some boards as a measuring stick here, well, we can see the difference between the lower cross bracing and the upper one. And looking from the side here, yeah, this thing is more than halfway full, while being completely empty apparently. Likely just a little oversight, doesn't have anything to do with how it acts in the game, so this is more of an optical thing, but still weird enough. And the next thing, while it's also more optical than anything else, I gotta say I'm taking more and more issue to this kind of stuff because it just seems like such an unnecessary oversight. For the barn, I don't mind the gate you go in through being a bit larger. Would potentially allow you to just, I don't know, maybe ride in here with a horse if there were horses in this game. However, it really gets out of hand when we are looking at the actual farmhouse building. Because the closer we get here, the more we notice that this is massively oversized. Is it really that difficult for them to model this stuff? If the modeling program itself for some reason doesn't have a scale in it, place it down in a world, run up to it in third person, and check if Mr. Ray Rosen here isn't suddenly turning into a little boy who may have got sent over by their mother to get some sugar or something. Like, what the hell is this? And I don't think they ever did anything to fix the other buildings that already came in with this issue months ago. So let me just check on that to not talk out of my ass. I think the Undertaker was one of one of the culprits here. Of course, John is now a bit shorter than he used to be, but yeah, you can clearly see this guy and whoever lives in there, they are not of the same species. So yeah, this is weird. Shouldn't be in the game as it is right now. And I don't get why they don't fix this. It's just annoying. Again, with the water, would have preferred this to be fresh water or something to tell it apart. But one thing that they've done here that is pretty interesting, they space this out in a way that encourages putting the cars together in pairs. So you would get 2 bulkhead cars for the straw bale, 2 tanker cars for the water, and 2 box cars for the grain, and that means that you can unload everything at once. So one of each, then move it over by a bit, then get the next one, and so on. So this is pretty cool. Looking forward to finally getting to this, and this is kind of a neat little thing that has you think maybe a bit differently of how you assemble the trains. So this is kind of cool in its own right. I don't necessarily like that all of the resources here have a capacity of 100. Feels a bit not too well thought out, or just not really putting too much thought into it. Maybe it would be nice to make this a bit larger and allow much more water to get in here. So maybe you could get a designated watering train. But yeah, overall, not too much else to say about this. I like that the cows actually walk into the cars, however, they do the same thing as ever other resources when unloading them, so they will just spawn right next to the car and fall down onto the platform. The devs talked about making another industry overhaul, and I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it would improve things. At least I hope it would improve things. I don't want to be too negative, but right now with what we get here, and especially the lack of them really going back and adjusting these things, it's kind of hard to not lose at least a little bit of hope here. Especially when calling back to this menu right here, Dynamic Weather and Custom Weather. Before the November update, this used to be one menu without 2 tabs. And this being 2 separate options now makes it really hard to get into some of the stuff, because it really disallows it to have custom day-night length with different weather conditions, like the weather changing, because there is no random version or no random option anymore. So yeah, this would have been really easy to fix, because all they needed to do was take the old version, put it back in, remove a new one, maybe not in that order, but that would be it. Haven't done so in over a month since between the other update and the December one. So yeah, last main topic, and this is where I really kind of lost it. I was always a bit weirded out by the kind of inputs and outputs you get from the slaughterhouse over here. You deliver live cows, and you get some sort of canned meat as an output. And you also need to deliver coal. So you're apparently burning the meat, smoking it, cooking it, whatever. And I made sure to look this up on Google in order to find out what corned beef really is and what's really the main ingredients. I don't want to get too much into the wooden crate, which would likely require lumber to be delivered. I think some of the shortcuts are absolutely fine. You cannot make this 100% accurate, so let's just assume they have the wooden boards in order to make the crates, they have the tin, everything is alright, all you need is the ingredients to get this to work. So corned beef is basically beef being put into a solution of highly saturated water, and is saturated with salt. That's kind of giving me another reason to suggest that we should have gotten a salt mine here. But yeah, we didn't. And the kicker for this is corned beef doesn't always come cooked. It can be raw. So while I don't think it's a bad idea to have another industry that requires coal, this is really a stretch making this work, and I don't know, couldn't you have put out smoked wheat or something, smoked beef I mean, or something for this? That would have been much more preferable. But yeah, it is what it is, and it feels like this isn't a good output product for this. Another thing, the cranes usually always have like a sample box of whatever resource they are supposed to pull up, and they are pulling up the actual dynamic one through that. Where is the dynamic box here for this one? Well, it's below there. You can barely see the writing down there. I don't know why they did this. This is absolutely sloppy work. I just remembered one thing that I wanted to talk about regarding the water well. Not only can it be placed around everything, I know I'm kind of jumping back here, but kind of done with this anyways. Yeah, it would have fit anywhere, and this is the smallest industry anyways, and since I was talking about the salt mine, a salt mine as a small industry would at least make sense because it would give you some idea on where you are supposed to put it, whereas this one can just go anywhere. Anyways, it was just a small addendum to that whole point. Overall, I gotta say, while some of the changes here are pretty interesting, on principle I like having new industries to play with as well. It's all kinda not quite there yet, and with the speed of the devs just not really adjusting anything regarding this kind of stuff, and also putting in the much disliked Steam cutoff sim again, I want this game to be better. I have nothing to gain from this game failing, but right now, and I'm really sad to say that really, I feel like if it continues in its current path, this is gonna become the game that I used to play once Century of Steam comes out. And I would really like this to be another good, amazing, viable game to play once the other one is finally here. But right now, especially when it comes to not being able to edit the terrain and some of the other stuff that's not really well thought out, and the bugs that take some time to fix, although again, that can happen. This is not in a good place right now. I hope they get better, but if they don't, at least in presumably half a year or something, maybe 3/4 of a year, it's just, I mean, people are really just speculating on when Century of Steam might come out, but at that point, if this is still doing the same thing, this might be one game to occasionally come back to and just see if it's still doing something. But yeah, I hope it improves. I'd be sad if it doesn't, but I also want to be realistic. And right now it feels like in a few ways it's really not in a good place, and that makes me kind of sad. So let me know what you think about all of this, and thanks for watching as per usual. Have a good day. Till next time. Bye bye.